All right, and Paul Johnson's here from South Dakota, and I'll let you take over.
Here, I'll get you set up here. Well, good morning. Thanks for being here, and I will share a little bit of what South Dakota is up to with this one, and where we have it. The numbers on the map indicate the first one is where we initially found it, and as we've developed over the years, we've had it since 2014. And again, most of those counties have one site per county. If we look up in the center, number 4, 5, and 6, we probably have 2 to 3 in each one of those counties, but otherwise they're just single sites. We have seen, and you have to forgive me, I'm going to have a little bit harder time with this. I'm used to using a clicker. Rate of spread in South Dakota has been about 2 to 3 sites per year. It's dependent on who did not think. And to explain that a little bit more, our first guy, it took me about 3 weeks to figure this one out, but went out and visited the field, and it was obvious it was spread by a combine. And I talked to the guy, and it's an area where a lot of combines are hired coming in from out of state. And I said, you must have had it commercially combined. And he said, no, there's no way. You get too many weeds. I do not contaminate my fields, nor my renter's field. And this was a renter's field. And so he was very concerned about this. Didn't want anybody to know. Didn't want to this date, I have not give out the site outside of visiting it myself. Because he's so concerned about that the renter would be upset, take him away, and things like that. But about 2 weeks later, I was laying in bed one night, and it dawned on me, and I called him up the next morning and said, you didn't get a different combine last year, did you? And the phone went completely dead. And he'd bought a combine used out of Kansas, and that's where his Palmer had come, and once he'd got her cleaned out, and he said, you know, I never thought about cleaning it out because they said it was all serviced and ready to go. And so that's some of what we do. Cattle pot. We got a guy that, our second one was a guy that hauled commercially cattle all over the U.S., cleaned out his semi at home, and then hauled the manure to the field and contaminated himself that way. Who bought a header out of state. We've had both soybean and corn headers out of Illinois. Luckily, none of the states represented here yet we've got from, but we've gotten from about every other state, I think. Who bought a header out of state, hired a custom combiner. We have a couple suspects there. Bought feed from out of state. And again, we're very concerned about the cottonseed too, because the eastern part of our state, we do have a significant amount of dairy now, and are worried about those types of things with the feed from out of state. Also, could be spread by wildlife. We have not found this to be a problem yet, and just about every farm though I've went to, that's the first thing they say, because you know they don't want the problem to be from themselves. Seed out of state really can make things interesting, and being in most states, Palmer is not noxious, and when people are bringing in seed close to the time, we had a millet field this year where the seed was in the state under 5 days before it was planted. It wasn't labeled properly, and we were able to trace it back and pull a sample and determine the Palmer was there. But again, Even if we do a noxious seed law, in the cases we've had so far, it would have never gotten caught. We had a teff seed come in from Oklahoma, and the same way, didn't have any labeling. The farmer wanted it bad and got it in and caused a problem. So our reporting system, we encourage to get an official ID with plants or pictures, and have those done that way. All of our extension and government agencies follow number 1, and those plants generally come to me, and then if I feel we need to, we send it off for the official ID to our person for that. We don't encourage them to report it to their local legislator. We had one of that this last year, and all of a sudden you're getting calls from your deans and whatever, and what are you doing to take care of this, and it needs to be done now, and the state has to take care of this, and you know, we should be able to handle all these things and nothing flat. Once confirmed, we encourage to share information with neighbors and local agronomists. And I say we encourage, because it is, again, farmers are private. They don't want to share that information. And so you got to talk to them about the good for everybody with that one. Our educational efforts, we provide information at all our CAT or commercial applicator training meetings on how to ID it and to be aware of it, and be watching for it. We write news stories and do TV, radio interviews on it to help get the word out that way, because, yeah, education is the key. Provide information to field agronomists, and so they can be looking for it. The other part of it is you've got good field agronomists and you've got field agronomists. And I've had more calls from people that, well, yeah, I got Palmer on my farm, and the guy tells me I need to do this herbicide program now that's going to cost another $30 an acre. And, well, how does he know you got, well, it's all over our area, he tells me. And so you also have to watch out for that. And we had one county that everybody was convinced they had it, and there wasn't a plant that could be produced in that county. In fact, that county still hasn't got a confirmed site, but it's got quite a bit of water hemp in it. Continue to encourage a no tolerance policy on Palmer. We've been working with all the sites and ask them to walk it, and you can't just walk it once a year. You've got to do it several times because they can keep coming up. Continue to work with South Dakota Department of Agriculture. They've been very supportive, and we've worked together to try and come up with, if there is some regulations we can use that would help. To this point, we haven't, because I'm a little worried, like North Dakota declared it noxious. Now the farmer is going to be less likely to tell because he doesn't want to be known as having noxious weeds. It is a point of contention in our county or in our state that you just don't want to be known to have noxious weeds. We have very few on our list, and so it's taken very seriously to control them. And so, and by the time you would ID it, confirm it, and go through an enforcement process, you'd already be to the next year, and you would have let all the plants go to seed anyway. Continue to send in suspect plants for ID. This can be very interesting. Just to give you an example, here's one I got in this past year. It had to be big and bad because you can see the bales down there about 5 feet tall, and it's another 5-6 feet up. And they were concerned because it's big and bad. It had to be Palmer, but obviously it wasn't. Also, you'll get pictures like this. It's got to be Palmer. because it's bigger than corn, and that's what they read in the newspapers, you know, by the people from other states. And when you look at it, it obviously isn't Palmer. And so consequently in our state, Palmer hasn't been known to be big and bad. In fact, 6 feet is the tallest Palmer I've found to this point. This is the first Palmer I found in the state. It's about 2.5 feet tall in a sunflower field in mid-September. Now, sunflowers is where we've found it the most because there's no post-emergence chemicals to control Palmer in sunflowers. So once their pre-emergence wears out, you will get those coming. I guess to me, the real key I try and put out there to farmers, we've got all these ID techniques and how you can tell it if it's got a watermark, if it looks like a poinsettia and whatever. And I can, if I'm doing the education part, I would go through all of those to show you that we can't always ID it. But this one here, the spines where the petiole attaches to the stem, it is, I've never found one that had that hasn't been officially keyed out to be Palmer. And so we also know, though, that spiny pigweed can have this, but it's a little bushy plant, and so consequently, this is our main key for education. In fact, I'll tell you, Palmer doesn't have to be big to produce seed. Here you can see one. Again, this was about mid-September. It's about 1 inch tall, and it's already got a seed head on it. So I would challenge you guys that walked in North Dakota, did you come back in September and take all those out of that same field? Because that's what you have to do and what we've seen. You need to look at, we've had some of them that have been doing 2,4-D treatment late if they can't walk it. But again, so far outside of 2 seed fields, all of ours are confined to an acre or 2 area to deal with. I guess this is what I look at and talk to farmers about when I'm trying to look at the importance of the ID. I don't want them to get all hung up on it because on your left, you have a Palmer plant. On your right, you have a water hemp plant that's got a gallon of Roundup put on it. Which one are you going to have more problems dealing with? We actually have one Palmer site, and we don't know what we've got for resistance in Palmer because we've just tried to eradicate it and not go to all the work, and I just don't have the time to test them out. But I know one of our sites wasn't even tolerant to Roundup because after the guy got done sending me the pictures, collecting a sample to send in, he sprayed them all with Roundup and they were dead, and he reported that back. So here's what we kind of see, farmers' response to outbreaks. Might as well quit right now. That's the first thing you'll hear. You know, oh my God, I've read so much about this. It's the death of me. And then the next, why has the state not did more to help? That's their next question. And so now you've got another 5-minute talk with them. And then by the third question, what can I do to deal with it? And how do I keep it from spreading? You know, talking to them, I think especially as you get into this, in row crop areas, we encourage they treat that area where it's located in separately, that if they're going to combine it, they combine it separately, they clean out everything afterwards. Tillage, if they're doing tillage the same way, the equipment has to be cleaned, and we go through that whole procedure with them. They move forward with a plan in place on what they figure will work for them, and then I try and follow up in the next year or two to see how it's going. And so far, I've just got one guy that doesn't seem real concerned about it, and he's a very prominent farmer, and I don't know why. But with that, there's my contact information, and I'll turn it back. and we'll look forward to questions in the panel, or if you got a quick one while they're switching over.